Hello everybody and welcome back to another video for the day. We're going back into r/entitled people because you guys seem to like that story time format, the good old lengthy stuff. So maybe we'll do it again and see how this goes. I would love to know what you guys think of these, by the way. So without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, Lego. An entitled coworker tried to hijack our wedding. Hey Reddit! Was listening to a Bridezilla story and it reminded me of something that happened when my lady wife and I were planning our wedding in 1992. Part 1 is a background/context, and Part 2 is the entitlement. Feel free to skip to Part 2. Permission granted for Redditors to use this on YouTube. Yeah! Part 1, the wedding we wanted and had. My lady wife is the anti-Karen, the anti-Bridezilla. On our first date, she fanned out a stack of restaurant coupons and said, "Where do you want to take me?" We picked Pizza Hut. Her engagement ring is a heart-shaped amethyst with 2 little diamond chips. I bought it at Kmart. She cherishes it. Her wedding dress did not come from a bridal shop. It came from a Sears catalog. It's a very simple, white lace straight T-length dress with a cream underdress. It would not be out of place at an afternoon tea. I bought my 3-piece navy pinstripe suit since I needed a suit anyway. We wore the same clothes, with different accessories, to a costume party in the 1920s gangster style and his mall. We had the wedding at our church. Our pastor was the real deal. He blessed the rings, and then we handed them back, and they were ice cold. We exchanged the old wedding vows, think King James Bible style. My lady wife nixed the obey though. A couple of my buddies found out at the last minute that they could make it and showed up. After we said our vows, they pulled out swords and made an impromptu arch for us to walk under. Okay, that is badass. I would love for that to happen in mine. My wife's friends were upset, and they started yelling, "Nobody told us to bring our swords." Wait, you had more friends with swords? That's awesome. Yeah, major sci-fi, fantasy, D&D, medieval geeks on both sides of the aisle. Alright, I already love you twos. The reception was in the community room at the volunteer fire department I belonged to. Not fancy, but so informal and chill and practically free. A local supermarket with an awesome hot food bar catered. Everyone had so much fun. My boss's boss, a good friend, gorgeous blonde, showed up in her little black dress and appropriately flirted with my buddies. I don't think anybody will forget the pillow mint fight that broke out. A few of my wife's older relatives seems sort of confused at the antics at first, but ended up having a blast. My father-in-law had set a rough budget for the wedding in his head, and my lady wife came in way under that, so he gave us the difference in cash at the reception. He was already paying for the honeymoon as his wedding present to us. Honeymoon was within a day's drive and was a huge deal for what we got. My lady wife remembers the complete total spent by us and father-in-law as $2,000 US in 1992, which included the honeymoon, so under $4,500 US today. 32 years together, 31 years married this October. Next anniversary is going to take a page from my granddad and raise a toast to 5 years of wedding bliss. Part 2, attempted hijacking. When my lady wife announced our engagement, one of her coworkers, not even a friend, apparently got wedding rabies. She was so happy and went over the top offering to help. My lady wife was doing the tiny amount of wedding planning that was needed, see above, as her MOH lived in New Jersey. We were upstate New York, and had 2 kids to look after. Coworker insisted that it wasn't fair to my wife that the MOH wasn't doing the wedding planning. She kept trying to insert herself as the wedding planner. Nice of her to offer, but she wanted to arrange our wedding the way she wanted. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot? No, we did not want the frou-frou centerpiece thingy or any of that nonsense. Coworker, not knowing my wife well, of course had zero clue as to what our tastes are. My wife's MOH was already making custom silk flowers for us and the tables as a wedding present. I think coworker was delusional enough to think that she could weasel her way into being MOH. My wife kept politely but firmly shutting her down. The last straw was when the coworker called me to tell me about the surprise bridal shower that she was throwing for my wife so I could get her there. Oh heck no! First, my wife was already going to have a bridal shower at our house. Father-in-law and I went down to the fire hall and watched baseball. Secondly, my wife hates surprise parties. Thirdly, my wife would never have picked that restaurant. An overpriced steakhouse is an absolute last restaurant we would ever pick. Fourth, who the heck is coworkers planning on inviting? She didn't even know any of my wife's friends. Wife shut that down hard. She immediately called the coworker and told her off. No meltdown, no yelling, no screaming, no bad language or insults, just pure anger, as hot and bright as the Wheeler's torch. Cue the tears from coworker. Ooh, I was just trying to help. Nope, denied. We joke that you need to keep my lady wife away from breakable objects when she is angry. Cities, mountains, ranges, that kind of fragile stuff. Winky face. Drama over. The wedding happened. And from the looks of it, it sounds like you had a pretty kick-ass wedding. That is definitely a wedding theme that I would like. Swords and sci-fi shit and everything. Like, really, sign me up for that. But also, look, I'm all for people helping out when help is wanted. Key part being wanted. You can't just shoehorn yourself into setting up a whole wedding, especially when you're trying to set it up how you want it to be done. You don't try to vicariously have a wedding through two people that are already getting married. Our next story comes to us from Camper Nomad. My parents and Dan were back sooner than I thought, and they wanted money this time. This sounds like an entitled cinematic universe off of the title alone. This will not surprise some people who commented on my previous post, because my parents did some of the exact things that they said they would, which was wanting either my money or my signature. I didn't expect the classic lines of narcissists saying that I owed them, or give them some kind of socialist BS for sharing wealth, but that was just my imagination running wild. The ensuing situation was somewhat similar to that, but much more tame. I guess you could say they seemed to know not to push me too far and were mostly aiming for pity. It began when my parents recently got in touch with me through social media and asked for a meeting in a public place of my choosing. It just screamed trap. But I wasn't afraid. In fact, I was amused. They know I'm not to be screwed with anymore, so I could only wonder what they wanted this time. I picked a local restaurant that may have a name of an olive and a garden in it, and we met there. Dan was with them, but he kept his mouth shut most of the time. We had awkward greetings, ordered some drinks, and then cut to the chase. My parents begged me to help Dan get his own apartment so he could finally move out. Apparently, Dan's credit isn't so great. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be his wife regularly spends him into a hole? Well, they asked that I help, either supplying some capital or by co-signing for the apartment and to help to pay rent for it. I simply said no to both. That's when Dan spoke up in anger and he yelled at me that I have so much. And I don't have a family to support like he does. He needed my help, and I should be sparing the money for his family since I don't have one myself. I laughed and asked where they were when I needed their help. Oh, that's right. They were pointing and laughing at me for being homeless. Or should we go further back to my childhood? I would love to delve into that. Plenty of years to listen in around us. My mother grabbed my hand and begged me not to speak of any of it. My father and Dan both just looked away and said nothing. Pretty sure they wanted to say something like they used at me, but held their tongues. I asked them if they thought I was rich or something, and their looks said it all. And when I told them that I didn't have that kind of money, they looked at me like deer in headlights. I broke it down about how much I managed to save for my down payment on my house, and the way I had to live and work in order to save that much so fast. And then of how I spent nearly all of it on my down payment of my house. I'm still in financial recovery. I did have a monthly income to spare, yes, but most of it is going right into my savings. I asked Dan what his yearly salary was, and when he told me, I pointed out that it was actually a bit higher than mine. I then loosely broke things down in rough math in front of my parents on how about 70% of my income goes to my mortgage, insurance, gasoline, internet, phone, food, and other bills. And then that maybe 30% of that left at most I can put into savings. And I need that money saved to get to back on my feet in time. And I have to make sure I have savings to fall back on. My truck is from the 90s. If it were to break down, I'd need money to either fix or replace it. And there's other things that I would need a rainy day fund for, like home repairs, doctors, taxes, lawyers, or anything in general that you would need quick cash for when it's a sudden, unexpected expense. So, as you can see, I can't just spare money for Dan. And I also refuse to co-sign for anything, as that would leave me on the hook for any bill that Dan couldn't or wouldn't pay. Then I pointed out that that's likely why my parents didn't co-sign for Dan's apartment themselves long ago. And my mother just started crying again. I was pretty much one step ahead of them in all of this. I'm not an ATM, and I'm not a fool. And I stated that right to their faces. I expected my father to become angry with me like he always does, but this time he just, well, didn't. I've known this man to explode on me for the slightest provocation of not enabling my brother all of my life. But this time he just didn't do that. There weren't even a sneer on his face. The only way I could describe the look he had was regret and defeat. Maybe regret for being a bad parent, or maybe regret because he can't bully me around anymore. Who knows? Either way, my parents couldn't really argue with me, and I wasn't about to give them any money. Dan just got up and said that this was all a waste of their time, and that he was leaving. My mother started apologizing for him, but Dan still wanted to leave. Then, just to kill with kindness, I offered to buy them a round of unlimited soup and salads while we were there. I guess they couldn't turn down free food since we hadn't ordered anything but drinks yet, and they stayed. I went out of my way to talk about anything other than money. Dan remained quiet and was either eating his food or looking at his phone, but my parents just awkwardly talked with me. They brought up that they have recently joined a local Christian church, and that they had always been going for the last 2 weeks. I said, good for them, and they of course started trying to advertise that they'd like me to go too. I simply said no thanks, and they were smart enough not to push it further. When the meal was finished, Dan left a $10 on the table for the tip and walked off without saying another word to me or anyone. My mother just excused his behavior, and we all parted ways. That was about it. Not nearly as much drama as I thought that there would be, but this is still far better than how things used to be with my parents and my brother. As for my sister-in-law, well, she's been regularly complaining online about my parents. She really doesn't seem to like the fact that she's not queen bee of the house, and I think her toxic is finally getting to them. Why else would they be so desperate to come crawling back to me? Sister-in-law actually wants my parents to move into a camper like I had to do in order to make space in the house, and she being told no every time. She does seem to have a following of Karen-minded people like her though, because here and there I got messaged by someone I don't know that are intent on raging at me for not giving up my house to sister-in-law. I don't bother to argue with these people anymore and just block and move on. Though there was one persistent troll who had my phone number and they call from a different number every time. Yes, it seems to be the same person who called me to say I need to make way for a real family man like Dan, but I could care less. The calls, though, seem to have slowed down, if not, maybe stopped, because I made it clear to that person that they were only amusing me by keeping this up so long. The last time they called was around the beginning of the month, and it's been silence from them since then. People being dongs to you, but then realizing, oh wait, this person actually is now doing really good for themselves, hey, let's go try to be friends with them? Yeah, no, that's not gonna work out whatsoever, and I am waiting for the day that happens where I can do the exact same thing, because I know for a fact there are people that were dongs to me a while back, and if they saw how I was doing today, being a lot better than I was back then, I know for a fact that I could have the same scenario scenario popping up. And yeah, no, I would definitely bring up how much of a dong they were to me in the past, that's for sure. Like, hey man, yeah, I need a little bit of help here. Yeah, you were a dick to me in high school. No. Don't date women with kids. I took an incel to lunch today. I am a 35-year-old man, and today I did a favor for my wife, you, who is a concierge manager at a Niagara Falls hotel. Her friend's brother is moving to my city, and my wife helped him secure a job at the hotel where she works. You asked me to take him out to lunch and show him around the city because he's super socially awkward and has no friends here. He's 25 years old, and for the sake of the post, I'll call him Cletus. I picked up Cletus, and socially awkward doesn't even begin to describe how socially inept he is. He's a bit rude and crude, and I don't particularly like him. However, I remained polite. I had promised to take him out, so I did. We embarked on a city tour, visiting places like the Ripley's Museum and an arcade, and then we had lunch at a small diner. While we were seated near the door, eating our meal and awkwardly conversing, a woman entered the restaurant pushing a stroller, and she was alone. It was as if a switch flipped in Cletus's head, because his demeanor drastically changed. He went from being merely awkward to openly disgusting and angry, and that's when his true nature emerged. I asked Cletus what was wrong, and he answered by saying, "That's disgusting." I inquired, "What's disgusting?" and he replied, "Her, right there." I looked at him puzzled and asked, "What's wrong with the mom pushing her kid?" He said, "Oh, she's ruined." I don't understand, so I respond, "Eh." He literally said, "She is. She parties too much and opens her legs for everyone. Now she has to face the consequences and feels sorry for the kid." I remained utterly confused, so I had to ask, "What do you mean?" because I genuinely couldn't comprehend his perspective at that point. He said, "It's because women like to open their legs left and right. Good guys like myself can't find a woman because they're all easy. They all have kids. He would never consider dating a woman with kids because they're all used up." He also claimed that single mothers raise kids to be redacted or criminals, and that they can't do it without a man. He believed that kids needed a proper man in their lives to grow up as effective adults. I sat there shocked and managed to say, "Oh, wow." I asked Cletus, "Are you sure you're alright? Seriously, you see a woman walking with her kid to a restaurant at 12:30 in the afternoon, and you instantly think single mother, that W? You know nothing about her. She's in a restaurant. She's busy. She's hungry. But you see her by herself pushing a stroller, and you just think that she's easy." I pointed out, even in your argument, you made points on why you should date a woman with kids for the kid's sake. That you said that a kid needs a man in their life, or they are going to be a criminal. So why not be that guy? Why not step up to the plate? Why not meet a good woman and be a dad to those kids? For society, so they don't grow up to be criminals because you are such a good guy. Now, here's where the story starts to get more interesting. The woman had been seated by this time, just a short distance from us. A really good-looking man walked into the restaurant, scanned the area, spotted her, walked over, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and sat down. It turned out to be her husband. I was utterly disgusted with Cletus at this point, and I had other plans to show him the city that day. I told him, "Hey man, I'm gonna pay for the food, and we're getting out of here. I'm taking you home." On the drive back, when we got in front of his apartment, I said, "Cletus, I've got something to say for you before you go. You've got to fix your attitude. You've got to change your way of thinking towards people. If you keep this up, you're going to be a very sad and lonely man. Women can tell when you are just a bad person. The kind of person you are can be seen without words. When I met you, when you first got in the car, I knew something was off. I didn't know exactly what, but I could tell. You really need to work on that, or you'll never be happy." That was it. He just got out and went inside. Later that day, when you got home, I told her everything, and I made it clear that I wouldn't be taking him out again, and couldn't be friends with this guy. Edit, just need to say thank you to my wife I typed this out, but she was kind enough to edit it for me, so it was not a hot mess of run-on sentences and poor grammar and punctuation. Another edit! Holy dookie, you're not going to believe we just saw this post. His sister just called his wife because he called her crying. I don't even use his real name. He just saw this post and wants me to take it down. I'm totally not gonna do that yet. No, even if they take down this one, it ain't gonna stop the YouTube video from going out. Just remember, everybody, what happens on the internet is forever. I had my wife served for divorce, and she sided with her key-stealing entitled mother. Just because I found out through some humorous, I'll be referring to my wife as wifey from a lot now on. Also, I know I seem like I'm posting too fast, but remember, this originally started around 10 days ago, and I've not wasted time in getting the divorce started. I also apologize for the length of this post, as I could not keep it short. It really didn't take me long to find and hire a divorce lawyer, and she's mean. Yes, my lawyer is a woman, and she seems pretty good at her job. She asked me a couple of times if I was really sure I wanted to do this, but once I explained my full story to her and showed some evidence, she agreed with me and when I said I wanted to start ASAP. So, she got the ball rolling. Oh, this divorce is going to cost me, but I don't care. I'll rebuild my savings later as a free man. I didn't even want to rent the house I'm currently living in anyway. Wifey pushed for that. I'd have been happily staying in our old apartment that we used to share until we could actually have afforded to buy a house together instead. But that's obviously never happening. I'll be paying a lot less for an apartment once we separate. Before coming home, wifey spent some time at a cheap motel when she bailed her mother out of jail, and she even threatened to call police on me when I went to see her there. I changed the locks with my landlord's permission while wifey was still away, and sent her a text saying that I had done so, but I guess she had not bothered to look since she never responded, so upon returning home, she ended up pounding on the door and screaming at me to let her in. I just watched her through the doorbell cam, and let her keep it up for a while before she finally got on her phone to call me. I was already walking home from having had dinner with my best friend when she had called, and I pointed out the text that she had not bothered to read. When I got home to let her in, she was puffy-cheeked, teary-eyed, and red with a bit of cat butt face. I had a new key ready for her and told her that if she gave a copy to her mother again, I'd be notifying our landlord, as they were already very angry that she had given her mother a key to begin with. Not sure what the landlord could have done, but it was enough to make wifey comply for the moment. Plus, I'm not going to be living there much longer anyway. My mother-in-law still believes that she did absolutely nothing wrong and is playing victim to wifey every chance she gets. She's not allowed over anymore for obvious reasons, and I've been repeatedly called a monster by her and wifey. I've never been more glad that mother-in-law has no friends, because then she'd be telling them all her convoluted version of the story to paint me as the villain. I just know it. She was told how much my key collection was roughly worth, and what kind of felony charges she could be facing, though my collection was returned fully intact, so she may get the charges lessened. I'd like to hope that she gets a decent punishment at least, but I'm not really counting on a system to throw the book at a manipulator like her. As I said in my last post, wifey also paid her mother's bail and what she owed to the pawn shop with money out of our joint bank account, and then smugly told me that she wouldn't be putting the money back. Basically, that was a terrible power move, and her only way to try and put all of the cost on me. I've since removed everything I had in that account and stopped all future payments to it so she can't spend my money too. And I've changed my passwords to pretty much everything. Wifey flipped the heck out on me for it once she finally checked the account a couple of days ago, because that meant that what she paid for mother-in-law's bail and reimbursing the pawn shop was all in her money only, and now there was no more access to my funds to supplement her own with. I just ignored her tantrum and went into the home office to watch anime on my computer. She banged on the door while demanding I talk with her. I just stayed quiet and put on my headphones. Wifey has repeatedly demanded that I drop all charges against her mother, and even said that if I really loved her, I would not only stop at this, I'd cover the costs too. When I kept refusing, she moved into the spare bedroom. She tried to kick me out of the master bedroom first, but I made it clear I'm not giving up the master bedroom when she is the one at fault. She tried to start taking my stuff out, but I just blocked her, pointing my fingers at her face and said no, like I was talking to a dog. She ended up crying and saying I demeaning her, but I didn't care, and that for some more deception on her part, she admitted to me out of pure spite that until this mess had started, she had been planning on letting her mother come live with us full time soon because of the state of her hoarder house. She boasted that she was just gonna move her in while I was at work. I told her we were supposed to be equal partners before this had all happened, and I was sick of her unilateral decision-making, and as long as I'm paying 50% of the lease, her mother will not be living here. And if she tried, I'd throw all of her mother's stuff out immediately. Wifey looked like she wanted to explode and stormed off to have a drink and a loud phone call with her mother in the kitchen. I just started removing her stuff from the master bedroom and left it in the other room for her. I've put a new lock on the door to the master bedroom too. I had Wifey served at her job, which she said really embarrassed her in front of her colleagues, and she flipped out on me again once she got home. Apparently, she didn't take my threats of divorce seriously until those papers were actually in her hands. She said I couldn't do this, but I told her I was done. She made it more and then clear where she stands. I told her I learned a rather interesting phrase online. When people show you who they really are, believe them. And she has clearly shown me who she really is. And it is not the woman I fell in love with. The woman disappeared and got replaced with an entitled mommy's girl who refuses to act her age right after we got married, which makes it pretty obvious that she did that intentionally. At this point, I don't think she ever loved me, just my wallet, and I can't stay married to a woman who conned me into marrying her. Then she started screaming at me that she wasn't a gold digger, so I asked her if she'd have been inclined to stay married to me if I had done all the same things to her. She tried to deny it at first, but then looked around like she was trying to find a better answer. Then she just gaslit to deflect as usual, but I had none of it. I told her right then and there that I am not renewing the lease on the house with her because I don't want to live with a petulant woman child I can't trust. And if she wants to keep the house, then she can go ahead and start a new lease and move her mother in once I'm gone. Finally, that's when the real waterworks started. She said I was destroying our family, and I said, what family? And pointed out that how we don't have kids, and her mother is more important to her than me. We have no family. Then I just walked away. She loudly cried in the living room for hours, but I just ignored her. Now she's giving me the hardcore silent treatment and won't look me in the eyes. I'm actually enjoying it, which just seems to make her angrier. As an added bonus, I warned my current landlord about Wifey wanting to move her mother in, and I gave him all of the details I had about mother-in-law, the state of her hoarder house, and how much of a deceptive mommy girl the Wifey is, and warned him that if he let my mother-in-law live in a property that he owns, she would turn it into an utter disaster. He thanked me for telling him, and is now not going to let Wifey renew the lease on her own if she tries. He'll be advertising the property soon. Wifey has no idea, and likely would have only just barely been able to afford the house with her mother's help anyway. One more thing. Yesterday, someone warned me to take my name off of the joint bank account entirely so I would not be on the hook for any overdraft. I took that to heart and went to the bank to get it done. It only took a few minutes to do it, and the bank is 10 minutes away by car. All good now. I've been working from home lately, so I had the time. All statements from the account were already printed and given to my lawyers too, so I can wash my hands off of it. Edit. I don't know if it's the same rules everywhere, but the bank had no problem removing my name from the account as a co-signer when I pushed for it. There were no debts on the account and had plenty more than the minimum balance. The bank likely did tell wifey, but whether or not she knows I did it, it does not matter as she is currently not talking to me. Edit 2. I've noticed a few comments pointing out how I was completely unnecessary that I pointed out my lawyer was a woman. Looking back on it, I did write that as like a complete jerk. I was rather excited in the moment about it. No, that's not an excuse, I acknowledge that. But how quickly this lawyer helped me just made me so happy. I'll make sure not to sound like such an idiot in speaking of her again from now on. I'm very much hoping that things work out for you and you're able to get the justice you very much are looking for. But with that, that is going to have to be it with the video. If you guys would like to be absolutely amazing, show your support and see more videos like these one in the near future, be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below to start up the wholesome internet discussions, and if you guys have not already, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. Also check out the end card, there's a playlist with more videos like these in case you like this one. But I'll be sure to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and bye bye!